Welcome to the Migrant Resource Centre, Northwest Region Incorporated Diversity and Disability YouTube channel. Your Life, Your Voice program, where self-advocates and professionals in the disability sector are interviewed. The Diversity and Disability Project would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we work and live and recognise their continued connection to land, water and community. We pay respects to elders past, present and emerging. Nothing about us without us. We pay respects to all self-advocates who have worked hard over the years and still working tirelessly for their rights, supporting others with disabilities and human rights for all. This channel is for people with disabilities who aspire to seek self-advocacy role models to inspire change in their everyday lives. Nothing about us without us. Choice and control are central themes. Every interview is as unique as you and I, and it has our fundamental universal human rights ethos of respect for persons with disabilities, having their views heard and acknowledged. After all, it's all in the name. Your life, your voice. Be the voice of change in your life. Good morning and welcome to the Season 4 edition of Your Life, Your Voice for 2023, Season 4. I'd like to welcome Larissa McFarlane. Welcome, Larissa.
Hi, Julie. Thanks.
Yeah, so the channel is, it's getting another year of going, and hope that everyone is enjoying the resource. So today we thought we'd show a video from the Voices Together site, and it's a very interesting interview. I'll just set that up.
Yeah, and I'd also, before we get started with that, just like to ask how you're going.
Yeah, I'm going really well. Always busy, start of the year. And so,
because it's been some time since time, and people have been on summer holidays, so it's been a while. Yeah.
Yes, so I actually went on holidays. I went to Waterfall a few weeks ago because I have to travel outside of holidays because I struggle a bit with a lot of people. So I waited a little while. And the second week of February, I went to Waterfall. So had a lovely catch up with some friends, some local friends. And they took me around, and it was a really lovely break.
Oh, that's
yeah, sorry.
Did you Warrnambool, in the disability community, Warrnambool is renowned as an inaccessible destination due to the very difficult public transport that goes there. How did you find? Was the transport working for you?
I actually drove there.
That is the solution.
I can't really answer that question from a disability perspective.
It's been a source point for as long as I can remember. So I've only been in the disability community 24 years, which is actually a very long time, and it has always been a really big problem because they it's advertised as an accessible train, but it most of the time does not have any wheelchair access, and people get stranded all the time. So
I did check the trains, and the trains, there are not as many trains to Warrnambool. There might be, I don't know, 3, and if you miss a train, then you're in trouble. So that's sort of like, and it's the first time I've driven. Well, the trip was 4.5 hours, and so actually it was 3.5 hours, and with breaks it's 4.5 hours.
what I did going, I stopped halfway in Hamilton, and then on the way back, I started to drive back in. I went fine on the way there, so that was a good 3.5 hour drive. Then on the way back, I started to drive straight through, and I was fine, And if I needed to, I could have stopped, or I make sure I'm safe. So yes, so that's what I did. And I think with people with ABIs or with any disability, really, our body tells us what it needs. So if we sort of like listen to our body, it really tells us, And even though I thought it was okay, and I was generally okay, but my body needed a break from my area, and the air would have been. I love the air, so that's really nice. So yeah, but having said that, I went to a deep spring mineral hot spa, and because I knew I'd be asked some questions about this, just in general, and it was very accessible. There were I don't know about wheelchair users, people in wheelchairs, but there were rubbers to get in and out for most of the hot spas. But yeah, I suppose if you are in a wheelchair, I didn't see that being fully accessible. But I think I thought they were trying to do something for people who have physical issues. But I think generally you're right, Larissa. I think that it could be a problem for accessibility. Yes, so
well, we do know the world isn't really built for disabled people, so there's barriers everywhere. And I agree with you about the body telling you, but at the same time, the other side of that coin is when the body has told you that you need to stop or do something else or whatever, sometimes there isn't the environment to do that, or the understanding what we need to do. So I just want to add that in there, that it's looking after ourselves is not just about paying attention. It's also about the environment, and often the environment is not going to allow ourselves to take care of ourselves. I've been thinking about this a bit recently, and that's what sometimes leads to disabled people getting really isolated, is because the choice comes down to sometimes staying in the accessible environment, or the environment that keeps you safe, or that where you can do self-care and look after yourself. And that may mean that you then become isolated to your home, which is what has been happening, particularly in the last few years, as a way to keep safe. So yeah, the environment doesn't always help us to take care of ourselves.
Well, just on that point, I understand. I'll straighten from there. I understand that COVID and the COVID environment, because of the nature of COVID, and everyone's body is different. It affects people in different ways. And I'll be like, there's someone I know who basically decided to follow all the rules, and that's fine. It's good to follow rules. But there's a but. This person is really isolated now and is a bit afraid to leave the house. And apparently, a conversation I had with this person through Zoom's steering committee, I think I went to her place actually, we had this conversation. I went to her place to visit her because I gave her some work, so some artwork. So she did some artwork for me, and with a fee attached. And she said that even going outside in her backyard, she caught a virus and she was in hospital. And I think to myself, that's a bit very, very not good. And look, everyone is different. I encourage people to follow medical advice on their bodies or their instincts. But there's a but here with COVID. I think with what's the word I'm looking for? You build immunity by having contact with people. And I know that people that have had COVID or struggle with long COVID, that could be an issue, and I totally respect that. But the question is, how do we go forward in our lives? It's a tough one. It's a real tough one. I don't know whether you want to comment on that, Larissa.
Probably, but I'd like you to ask me how my summer was.
Okay. How was your summer, Larissa?
Because it directly relates to what you're talking about.
Cool.
Yeah, I had a pretty tough summer actually. I'm quite good today, but I have developed long COVID, and it's been a really, 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 really tough time. And I'm crossing fingers that I'm starting to improve. But it has reminded me about how about the lack of support that is afforded to you if you are sick, not just with long COVID, just generally, but in case you don't know, people who are living with long COVID, there is very little support, and there's very little recognition. There's very little anything, nothing. I haven't actually been able to get any support. I spoke to a friend today actually who got long COVID last year, and she did do the long COVID clinic, which has a long wait list, really hard to get into. And but she said it's done nothing for her because they're really focusing just on it being a respiratory illness. And they actually just told her, look, we don't have funding to do the investigation for what long COVID is, because long COVID is, and COVID itself is, it's not a respiratory illness, it's a multi-system illness which affects many parts of yourself. And there really isn't the funding or the research from our leaders to go into that to actually support people. And what's happening is people are just getting isolated and trying to fend for themselves the best they can. And so I found that really sad. But at the same time, that's also what happens to disabled people. Some groups of disabled people more than others, depending on whether the illness is seen to, whether it's intersected often with gender. So illnesses that women get more often tend to be dismissed more. And there's also interactions with other groups of marginalised people. But it's been, and of course COVID also affects your thinking. For me, it's been a huge increase in pain and also sort of weird dysautonomia stuff. So like nausea and dizziness and weird things. But yeah, the cognitive dysfunction and trying to plan and follow through is quite overwhelming, and it has and it leads you to sort of get really isolated because you just don't know how to plan anything or connect with people. And there's a lot of fear that happens around getting more unwell and getting messages that that you should be able to do something about it. Means that you tend to end up carrying a bit of shame and isolating more to avoid that dismissiveness that comes from parts of society, including the medical people, where you try to seek help, or friends, or it's which is not to say people are mean and nasty, but it's just this systemic sort of like, we don't know what to do, and so we'll just ignore it, which is not good for the thousands and thousands of people that have got COVID, long COVID, and are going to get long COVID, because the stats of getting it are quite high, particularly if the more times you have the COVID infection. Yeah, I know we've talked a little bit about this, but I do feel like there's a lot of not talking about it going on, which makes people even more isolated. Yeah, and interestingly, yeah, that's all I'll say for the moment, I think, unless you have any questions.
I do have some comments. We've talked about the medical model of disability, and you talk about COVID affecting all your subsystems, which I agree with. What I'd like to see from the medical field, which I don't think I'll see it, is an amalgamation or recognition of herbal medicines that I've been practicing for a long time, and they're very expensive. I mean, a lot of my income goes to this thing, which is why I need to work. It's not funded. It's not funded on any level. I'll make it a little bit from, the osteopath, from a mental health plan. But in general, for a very long time, since the age of 27, that's a long time. It's half a life, almost. I've been sort of like doing this stuff, and GPs, Western medicine, Western doctors, they've really been hard on me, like, basically calling me an idiot, but very, very, very politely. And, with medicine and doctors, they talk about something called empirical evidence, which with empirical evidence, it's based on it's based on like something that people are seeing, but they could be seeing it on a grand scale. But then the science gets involved and basically develops a question to be answered. Why is this condition, happening? And they have it's all quite technical. So, but then they do studies. They have all sorts of things, and because I'm basing my empirical evidence on myself only, doctors have told me, what you're having, it's expensive weed, or they poo-poo me, and there've been quite a number of occasions that the medical profession, not on purpose, or maybe on purpose, I don't know, have literally, I've literally nearly died, from their practices. So I said, look, I tell them, if they're going to be obnoxious to me, I can be obnoxious to them. So I just tell them, look, I know what works for my body, and I don't really care what you think, and it's my minding my body. So basically, on your horse and get out of my face, But I do need both systems for different reasons. So yeah, so it's a very interesting.
I think you do make the really good point that living with disability is really expensive. Yeah, and that most disabled people, I think, would spend a good part of their income. My apologies.
That's okay.
No worry there. But yes, people do spend a good part of their income on accessing treatments because, they're not funded. We've been told we live in this sort of public health system where health is free, but the system is been collapsing for a very long time, and it's quite bad at the moment. Even being able to see a GP bulk billed is really difficult. But all the other things on top of that, specialists, they're really expensive. And loath to mention this because it's such an example, but the whole medicinal cannabis rort is ridiculous. You know, we were supposed to be groundbreaking in allowing people to access medicinal cannabis, which can be really useful for people with pain and a whole lot of conditions. But it's, and I actually am a user of medicinal cannabis. I have been now for about a year and a half. It's been amazing. But it is prohibitively expensive. And to do it legally is even more expensive. I can't go legal because it's going to cost more than I have. And the system has been set up that most of your fees is going to the doctor, or the licensing fee, or there's all these fees, and the doctors. I mean, I get the GPs are trying to make a living too, because they can't do that out being general practitioners. So a lot of them are moving into prescribing medicinal cannabis, but they charge a lot, and none of it is on Medicare.
Yeah, there's someone who's on a legal one at the moment, and this person is finding it really good.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. But it costs $100 a month.
I think it's about that. I think to set it up was a bit more than that. But the initial setup fee for a lot of these things, including when you first go to any specialist, it's a lot higher than your ongoing costs. And that in itself locks a lot of people out. So that's a very interesting conversation that we've had. So we'd love to move on, Larissa.
Yeah.
Sure. So I've got the things set up.
Great.
Look.
Would you like me to intro this this little video we're going to see?
If you like.
Yeah. So it's called Sink or Swim, and it was made around 2010. Made with some people with brain injury who I happen to know, and actually all of them do. So it's a really true disability-led project, this one. The filmmaker also has a brain injury, although you don't get to meet them in this program. But it's an interview with a man with brain injury and his brother. And I found that actually it's on quite a few websites, which is great to see, because it's a good insight.
Yeah. Okay, off we go with the video.
Bring up your
who's the fish? George Sanchez. That's a Mexican walking fish. I think that was about to be like up. Yeah, just going to. Yeah, took him a while. Yeah. Good pull out. I watched it slip out. Yeah. So it's true. Move his head. Yeah. What not? How long will you get for? Oh, sorry, 7 weeks. 7 weeks. My mum says, oh. This is Alan Byrne and his brother Mark. Alan's been a person who's acquired a brain injury through a misadventure when he was living in Queensland. Yeah. Whereabouts in Queensland? Early Beach. Early Beach. Yeah. That's a good favourite location, isn't it? Yeah. Not anymore. Not anymore for you. No. So Alan was working as a British labourer in Early's Beach. He'd only been up there for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. He'd only just moved up there. Yeah. To be near my side. And what happened, Alan? You sort of got a bit. I just felt a bit sick. Yeah. So you said to your boss you're feeling a bit sick, and he said you better go home early. Oh, don't go early. Yeah. On your way home. On the thing on the day it was maybe over 40 degrees and 40 over 8%. You managed to get across a roundabout or halfway. Just collapsed. Just collapsed. Yeah. How long were you there? Lying on the roundabout? About 45 minutes. 4 or 5 minutes just laying there. 45. 45. So you were just Cars would go
Yeah.
around and people would walk
Yeah.
and no one stopped.
Every more fellow boy just drove past me.
Yep.
And thought I was sleeping.
Heat stroke. He just collapsed, boiled his blood.
Overheated.
Yeah. And all his organs failed.
Yeah. Even more vulnerable.
So very highly dehydrated.
What happened when the ambulance got you?
That went so wrong again.
I got taken to hospital, and then it lifted to Churchill. Every organ in my body felt.
He lost like 50, 60 kilos in 5 weeks while he was in the coma. When he came out, like, he just got skinnier and skinnier. When he came out, he was only 70 kilos. He was like 120 something.
So you had to learn all over again. Everything had to restart again.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they just went through his mobile to find a number and called Mum.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. We didn't really know what was going on, so we flew up there. And they didn't really know what was going on for a while. So we sort of sat around hospitals for the first couple of weeks.
You really virtually just sat there and waited yourself.
Yeah, just waited.
So after you got out of Townsville, did you come back to Melbourne
After 10 weeks,
after 10 weeks?
one over fit enough
To get on a plane.
to fly.
And this is where he's coming back home from Townsville. They were real worried because even there he couldn't hold his head up for too long. So, but he had to be able to hold his head up under the duration. Flying, or they wouldn't let him on the plane.
Yeah,
And that was a bit of a mission. They had to take a few steps out
yeah,
to get him back down. I
Right.
had to fly with nurses and doctors.
yeah.
And that was, an effort in itself. Then he went straight to headquarters.
Yeah,
How long were you there?
I did.
Long time.
A long time. About 2 years.
Yeah, 2 years.
Yeah,
And when you go through acquired brain injury, I was in a similar situation where you really have to literally learn how to walk and talk again.
Well, they got the whole speech.
Yeah,
the therapist, the person that teaches you how to
yeah.
everything. Yeah, it is amazing.
Just like being reborn again, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah,
Just Alan on a friend's motorbike. We just get some good photos. He used to have a motorbike himself.
yeah. I did.
So he still likes to
To sit on a leg.
we couldn't let him ride it. No, we let him have a go on a go-kart once. And,
It's dangerous. Just what you're going through, even the rehab, it's the whole process, isn't it? Is learning how to look after yourself
Yeah.
again and do everything for yourself.
It was.
Like you said, because when you came out of hospital in Townsville, you were virtually lifeless. You couldn't really do anything
Very
at all.
much.
Strapped into your wheelchair so you didn't slip out and everything. Yeah. So
Yeah,
and then you came back to basically learning how to even just move yourself around in the wheelchair and then slowly trying to teach yourself how to walk again. And it's a major problem, isn't it?
well, it's, 5 years on and he's still going to physio and doing all those things.
yeah,
When we go through rehabilitation, you're really improving really rapidly. And I remember when I was even doing rehab, the nurses said, "Oh, isn't he doing so well? He's improving all the time." And then you come to a plateau where it just levels out, and you even think you're going backwards a little bit for a time, but you're not really. You're just really going over things and relearning again, and
I think that's what was
yeah.
for the last year.
Yeah. So you sort of you in yourself you think, oh, what's happened? I've gone backwards all of a sudden. I've been improving and now I've slipped backwards. But you're not. You're really only just getting them into proper order and momentum happening again. Yeah, it's a slow process.
Getting used to life.
Getting used to life. Yeah.
A different life.
It's a different life. It's a brand new Alan Byrne. It's different to the old one. Yeah. How do you find people accept you now? People treat you differently now to what they would have before your injury?
Some people some people. But not everyone.
Not everyone, no.
No.
Mark doesn't.
No. My family doesn't.
And they're about the only ones who
Yeah.
really don't. I mean, other people see you as a different person than what you were.
Yeah.
Big question marks there.
Mm.
Because even now, even though I'm fully recovered technically,
Yeah.
but there's still people who think I've got a brain loose. I'm not altogether there.
Yeah.
So it's just a part of life.
You supported me.
Yeah. You really need to have a lot of people around you and give you as much information as possible. And
Yeah.
ideally, accept the information that you're being given.
That's the big one there. But he wants his independence too. So at least here he's got that, and we're just down there. So if he falls too heavily, you can always hear it down there.
Yeah.
So that's an added benefit of being able to live close
Yeah.
to your family carers and having instant response. If you live totally on your own, it would sort of.
There is no support for people if he's by himself. You worry, because he'd be in a nursing home or something. But a lot, but people are 40 years older than him. And that's wrong.
Well, I guess the problem there, if he just fallen over in the street and didn't have any work cover, he'd most likely be in a nursing home, and he wouldn't have any support at all. It is very grim, and Alan's really fortunate to be able to have this home built, because otherwise he'd be part of the other group where they're trying to get young people living out of nursing homes.
Yeah.
So this is the ideal sort of situation where he's got a unit very close to his carers, and they can keep an eye on what's going on, and yet ideally living independently.
And we thought that when it was a few years ago, what had happened if we didn't have the work cover thing.
Yeah.
And how would it be? Probably wouldn't have even been able to afford him to get him back down.
Exactly.
Sort of thing from Townsville. Because I think that in itself costs $60,000.
Anything can happen. Anybody can have an injury, so you never know when you're going to need an ambulance. So that's a $60,000 trip. You would have paid for that out of your own pocket.
Yeah. I don't much think about myself.
Well, he made all his bed and all that this morning. Doesn't unlock the door really until all the house sort of.
Yeah.
I'll just go to sleep in bed for a second. Tell me what that's.
Yeah, and he mops all his floors. He's got the bed.
And just give me.
Yeah. That's why we keep buying him pets and stuff. Just to give him that extra bit of responsibility, something to look after,
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Well, what other social things to do outside the house? Where do you go?
Physio
Physio.
and just
Physio.
movie.
Swimming.
Yeah.
All down at Cassie.
I go just sailing.
Sailing. This is on sailing, I think.
In Mornington.
Down in Mornington.
In the bay.
In the bay there, that was competition. That one. Yeah, it goes into competition sometimes. And you go to the group up there.
It's a group called Brain Strengtheners, working with people with acquired brain injury. We all have acquired brain injury, and so it's initially it's a support group, but we're really developing skills and on trying to teach ourselves to do things again, and also then look for our own advocacy, to really improve things for ourselves. So Alan's really come a long way just in having this unit. Whereas if you're living in a nursing home, you'd be just a destitute.
You don't have time to get out.
No.
No, yes.
If anything, you go to
Yeah, this is when his house is getting built. The place we're in now, he said we did it. Alan up in his house, there's my little brother Matty. I think he picked him up to get him up in the house to get him standing.
Yeah.
We kept getting in trouble because even though it was it was still a building site. You're not allowed up there. You're not covered. And we're like, come on, mate. Yeah, it's his house. Let him in it. And we weren't going to give up on him because he's part of the family, So why would you give up? And what if he's got an injury? We were always just going to accept whatever happened because we're pretty easy going. Just move along with it. Yeah, so we've done that. I think Daniel and Alan might be having a bit more trouble than we are. But that's understandable.
But he wasn't having Wasn't doing that.
No, absolutely not. He was always going to fight for us, so we had faith. He'd do as much as he could.
Yeah.
You know, we just had to be there.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's great. It's great.
Yeah. He still has highs and lows. Oh, Joe.
It's part of the injury. Any nice ways.
Of course, stand up, more not.
Why not? Yeah, we want to see it stand up. See it happen very often.
No.
Yeah, that's all right, isn't it?
It's easy.
It is.
What to think, everyone? I can't do that.
Stand up, it's good stuff.
Yeah.
We're back.
Yeah. I just want to, yep, that was a great little video about, and lots of credit to Alan Byrne there and his brother Mark. I want to acknowledge too that the interviewer was Neil Cameron, who is a well-loved and well-known Victorian man with an ABI who sometimes gets called Mr. ABI. That's been his nickname for the last 10 years. He knows a lot. And Michael Buckley was the filmmaker there. Yeah. Powerful stuff. I found that really, I have a lot of conflicting emotions watching and listening to that because of my own journey with brain injury. And I imagine I see it very differently to someone who doesn't have a brain injury. Yeah, but I think, yeah, how did you find it as someone, because your brain injury is something you acquired before you had awareness. And so how does it make you feel, Julie?
I have conflicting emotions also because I actually did not have a very supportive family. So, and I was blamed for everything, and everything was blamed on my ABI, which wasn't true. It was more like, yeah, being blamed for everything your whole life tends to set you up for psychologically for disappointment. And it took me a long time to realise, with lots of help, like professional help, that, yeah, it wasn't my fault. Nothing's my fault. And yes, so on that level, I'm glad there are examples of people out there. I know other people too with family support. I don't have any, I don't have any jealousy or envy issues. I'm actually very glad that these people have supportive families. So
yeah.
So with myself, I had to basically figure everything out myself, both medically, on every level of life. And yes, so my journey was a little bit rough.
Yeah, look, I suspect pretty much most people's story with brain injury, their journey with brain injury is pretty tough because it all feels tough, whether you've got the support, whether you're lucky to have that support or not. I think it does feel tough. I think that, oh, goodness, COVID brain. I think it really points to the luck there that that the system is not fair, and that, I mean, life isn't fair, but we all think it is supposed to be, but actually it's not. But yeah, there is a really great difference between people. I think a lot of people have brain injury don't have family support. I think it's a myth that we that society likes to carry around, that when something like a brain injury comes upon you, that you'll have the support of your family and your friends. But ask anybody with a brain injury, get a bunch of people with a brain injury in a room, they'll all talk about how their friends all dropped off, and in many cases the family dropped off too. But the other really unfair bit is funding. And so that if you have your brain injury as part of your work, like Alan did, or as a traffic accident, in Victoria, you have the TAC. So there is some funding there to support your medical bills. It's not an easy journey, because you end up doing a lot of battle with these insurance companies that cause their own special trauma, which can lead to PTSD. But yeah, if you just, happen to have a stroke, or you fell over in the street, or there isn't a perceived fault or any scheme, then you can really easily end up in a nursing home. Or maybe it's an instance of domestic violence, or maybe it's a drug-induced violent event. There are a lot of young people in nursing homes, and we were talking before about the isolation that happens with disability and chronic illness, and out of sight, out of mind. So there isn't sort of the media around it. So these people are really don't have a voice, and they're very hidden. That's why there's a Royal Commission. Yeah, I had a question there, but it's lost me. Oh, I think we'll go back to the beginning of the film, the video, and so shocking, as well as so predictable, but that this young man who collapsed on the side of the road was ignored by everyone for 45 minutes. I mean, I don't know how. I imagine eventually somebody did check on him, but he said that his workmates went past, that everybody, I mean, there'll be this assumption that he's drunk or he's on drugs, or that's really shocking. And I suppose that makes us, I hope that's a reminder to us that that it's really important to check in on people and not just assume, I don't know, even if they are on drugs, people still need help. It's this real tendency for us to just keep walking past and not check in. And his life could have been completely different if he had had somebody check on him as soon as he fell.
I found it amazing that he was in the middle of a roundabout when this happened. And I don't know whether you're aware, but a few months ago, there was some sort of roadworks on the West Cape Freeway. And there was an elderly couple, and the driver collapsed from heat exhaustion. Both slumped. They were both slumped in the car, and someone noticed and went to help them. And I don't know what happened down the road, but they got the help they needed. I don't know, I can't walk past people in need. I don't know, I just can't do it. I always ask someone, like, you get permission if you're not sure. Are you okay? Do you need help? Do you need someone? Call me. Do you want me to call someone? Yeah, and having said that, quite a few things that happened to me over the years, people did stop, and like people I didn't know, people of different religions, different cultures, they stopped. They got the offenders' details. They supported me. They stayed with me until my lift came. I was actually T-boned. It wasn't that long ago, actually, maybe 3-4 years ago. A T-bone is when I was going to a red light and someone came out of a red light and collected me. So I managed to walk away unscratched. I was shaken, but not broken or stirred. So I was stirred, but not broken. So people actually die from those accidents. And luckily, I've still got the photo on my phone. the point of impact was in the strongest part of the car between the two driver passenger doors. But it was very scary. And I managed to avoid all the poles and the hell, but managed to avoid all the poles and stuff. So yes, so life can be scary for anyone. And so I suppose we can sort of tease out what happens when life gets scary. You know, do you just curl up in a ball and don't do anything, or do you just try and move on with life? And I know for others, it's harder for others, for some more than others. Sorry?
I think you do both. I think that there is a place, you know, of course, I mean, humans are designed to survive. So we do keep trying. But I think we need, I would like to see a world where we accept that it's okay to sometimes to crawl up in a ball and just give up, because that is the reality that happens. I mean, Alan is remarkable for his, he sounds like an amazing man. I think I actually met him about 8 years ago when I went to visit that brain injury group. There are moments where it does seem all too much, and that's part of the process of trying to cope with the fact that your life has just changed so dramatically and that you need to learn everything again. And it's it's a roller coaster. And what I found really touching or interesting, or I felt it, was when they were talking about the plateau. And it looked like from that interview that Alan, it was 5 years post his brain injury, and he talked about the year before being this plateau where everything, the healing, the recovery seemed to stop. And Neil then talked about that too, where it feels like you're going backwards. But Neil, being a very wise man, pointed out that, you know, the recovery is still happening. It's just slowing down, and it can feel like it's stopped. But a lot of it is when you're relearning how to do things. Like you might learn how to tie your shoes. Like I learned how to do the dishes. It was amazing. I had such a skill. I loved it, but I kept forgetting. And then I would have to keep learning it until it got settled in me. And that didn't happen overnight. That took years. But I do know that feeling. I remember around 4 to 5 years, probably similar to Alan, where I had my brain injury when I was 29. And so in my early 30s, I went through this stage where I was like, oh my God, I'm not getting, because I was really trying so hard to get better, and I was going places and pushing myself, and I had this vision, I'm going to get better. And I sort of had this period where I just gave up and went, I'm not getting better. And it turned out to be a good experience, because it was a chance for me to go, this might be as good as it's going to get. How do I feel about that? I felt terrible, but I was also like, I need to learn how to live with what I've got. I need to stop sort of imagining that my whole life's going to return very quickly, soon in the near future, and accept that this might be as good as it's going to get, and how am I going to live with what I've got? And there was this real process of surrender, and it was quite, I mean, it sounds so simple, but it was really quite a distressing time, but it was also a very freeing time where I let go of trying to get better. Of course I didn't, because I'm human and we're all going to keep trying, but it was, a lot of it was stopping on trying to engage with the medical system, or not even the medical system, the healing system, the alternative medicine. I was spending lots and lots of money and my energy going to alternative practitioners to try to get better, but really they weren't helping that much. And so I gave up. I stopped them all, and I went, right, I'm just going to focus on trying to live here and now with me. And at that point, I put more of my energy into my gardening, because that was my new passion, and into my artwork, and trying to connect with people around me, and to stop trying so hard to get better. I don't want this to sound like I'm saying don't try to get better or don't try, but it's sort of refocusing and accepting where things are at. And I think it was also a point where I too learned to accept that I had disability, that I was disabled. And before that moment, I was so busy trying to not let that in, trying to stay away from disabled people, because I was not one of those people. I didn't want to be that. I grew up thinking disabled people are not good, so I didn't want to be there. So this period was a very important, this plateau is a time of where you come to terms with accepting and identifying as disabled. Yeah.
Yeah, look, I have been in this body and in this state from the age of 6 months. So I had to deal with lots of discrimination, and look, not every day, not everyone, but sometimes I get really rude comments, and just in social events, and trying to contribute to conversations, and my lady really shut me down quite rudely, actually. And so I would have been one out of 9 people, or 8 people, and everyone was quite shocked. And I won't get into the comment because it's quite hurtful, actually. And I'm thinking, because I have issues with the labels, the disability labels. And even though I've accepted myself, which in this body, it's still quite distressing when others point out things for no reason other than to feel superior. I don't know why they do it, honestly. Maybe to feel superior, maybe they're just assholes, but honestly, I don't know why they do it, but they do. And
very, very influenced by the cultural belief that disability is bad.
You know what?
And it's, most people don't get an opportunity to examine that within themselves.
I may be Christian, but sometimes I get really angry, I think to myself, let's see if something happens to you, you bitch. I am Christian. I go to church, but I also have feelings, I have feelings, and even though I've managed to work on my words so I don't get shut down for being using foul language or whatever, it's really difficult. And
I think, can I interrupt there, because there's this real stereotype that disabled people are angry, and we know why, because we have to deal with these horrible instances where people shut us down and paternalize us and make us feel unwelcome. It is enough to make anyone angry.
No, I'm Christian. I'm not perfect. When people attack me, yes, I want to attack back. And my people in my groups, faith was said, pray for them. It's really difficult to pray for someone that's attacked you. And that could be family, could be the community, could be anyone really. And I find that tough, and it's, yes, I battle on, and I just hope that this person somehow gets it one day. So if by the grace of God, that's all you'd say, if by the grace of God, I escaped that accident, I escaped that situation, or a loved one escaped, if by the grace of God, and good on you, lucky you, lucky you is what I say.
Because it is luck.
It is luck.
And at some point, disability will catch up with everyone, almost everyone. Some people won't, but the majority will. And yeah, most people live in denial of that fact, and are not willing to look at it. So when they see somebody who's disabled, there's a real tendency to sort of avoid or attack or, you know, anything to sort of say, I'm not like that person. And it's, I'm not excusing it. I think it's terrible, but I saw myself do that, you know, in the early years of my brain injury, where I was avoiding other disabled people because I didn't want to be there, because I'd been told that was bad. Yeah.
I don't really have a lot of time left. I'll just touch on quickly.
Yeah.
I think what you talked about earlier on about acceptance of condition. So just quickly, my last really severe injury was in 2011, which now it's 2023, so it's a fair time. And in the hospital system, they said to me, you're lucky, you will get better, but others, stroke victims, whatever, they're not going to get better. But you're lucky, you get better. And I said to them, like a bit of time went by, I said to them, well, I'm not the same person that I was with the same strength, but it's a different me. And so I had to embrace the different me. And even before the injury, you know, as time goes by, different health issues come up. So I learned how to, like, basically roll with that, that fact that, you know, my health, you know, I will suffer different conditions as time goes by, new conditions, and I have to deal with it. But yeah, so yeah, and that's my comment. So just embrace the person you are today, and love yourself and pat yourself on the back, because you are amazing.
And if you can't pat yourself on the back today, don't worry, because you can't pat yourself on the back and tell yourself you're amazing every day. That's too easy a solution. But yeah, I do fully agree with you that that we have to be our own. We have to be there's an expression I can't think of, but our best support for ourselves.
Our own cheer squad.
That's right. Yeah. And touching on that acceptance thing, and you know, and also because acceptance is part of grief and loss as well, and then grief, you know, is such a big part of lots of scenarios, but brain injury definitely, because the loss is so sudden and the grief can be so intense. And then there's acceptance, but it comes and goes. Like, you don't just do one and then you do the next and then suddenly you're over it. It's this ongoing process of grief and acceptance and self-love. And I just want to point out that that's also about disability pride. You know, that those experiences of accepting and grieving, and when you can see that part of yourself, I guess, and do that practice to sort of, especially when you engage in self-advocacy or group advocacy, and you're trying to make the world a better place for other people. But all these processes, they're all part of gaining disability pride. Disability pride is about, you know, that taking rest when you need it, resisting ableism and harm and hurtful and harmful comments, and rising above it, or wishing them bad as well. Being angry is a part of having disability pride. Like, they're all genuine reactions and towards having disability, because they're all really normal, and recognizing them as such and not giving yourself that hard time that says you should have tried harder. That's all part of the thing we call disability pride.
Yeah, and it's okay to feel all the emotions.
Yeah.
That's really important. Don't suck your emotions down because it's not healthy. Even if you get on the phone to someone or a support person, a counsellor, you do whatever you have to do to release those emotions.
And there will be days where you do push your emotions down, or your emotions get too much and you end up making a mess of everything. That is how it is too. And I just don't want, having recently spent the last couple of months being really isolated and in a lot of pain and very confused and spending a lot of time giving myself a hard time that I should be doing better. You know, it's important to not add to that burden by giving yourself a hard time. You're going to give yourself a hard time, but just remember that that's also part of the process, and do your best to do those things that you just said.
Well, on that note, we'll say goodbye to our listeners, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time. I'll just
catch us on Your Life, Your Voice YouTube channel, live every Monday fortnight or on demand.
We would like your comments and suggestions on topics that you would like us to explore. Leave your comments on YouTube comments section.
Please feel free to email us on dndyourlifeyourvoice@gmail.com or contact us via the Migrant Resource Centre Northwest Region Inc. Phone number 1300 676 044. 1300 676 044.
Diversity in Disability is a project of the Migrant Resource Centre Northwest Region Incorporated, and would like to thank the management for funding this project, especially living through the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic has been difficult for people with disabilities living in isolation.